in my nature to choose awkwardness, and it's not a decision. It's not noble. It's just my habit, you know.
And do you relax in between times?
I collapse, but only for like 20 minutes, and then I'm up again. I'm impossible to sleep with. You know, there's no peace in me.
Really?
Like, you know.
But that's exhausting, is it, all your life?
Yeah, but it is. But do you ever look at an animal like a small bird and say, Jesus, they must be wrecked? Because their heads, you know, and they're not. They're just, that's just who they are. That's part of my metabolism. Is, you know, it's funny. I'm more relaxed now talking to you than I was beforehand. So maybe the relaxment is kind of in the work somehow. I don't know. I have no desire to understand you.
Yeah. You kind of have a desire to understand, though. I think like there's a kind of, I think going along with your work, has there not always been? Would you call it a spiritual journey of sorts as well? Yeah.
There's great curiosity, and that's very natural as well. So on the chat show, it's very easy for me to keep asking questions because I am curious about people. It's very easy for me to have long conversations with people I meet on the street, and not to think that my curiosity is nosiness, even though it probably kind of is, but it meant be naturally curious, you know. I'd be great on Lifeline.
Yeah, your name has been mentioned.
Where?
Would you do it?
No, I couldn't. I'd find it very hard to fit that and the presidency in.
Yeah.
You know, I think it'd be.
Would you do either of them if you had to pick one?
I'd only do both.
You need to do one.
I'd only do both of them.
So the presidency, you haven't ruled it out?
I've never even considered it.
Okay. Would you consider it?
No, I'm too young. I'm too young.
There is even talk that Michael D is kind of like grooming you as a successor.
I think he's far too intelligent for that. He's a gifted man, and I think my feeling is that we're all aware of his morality, his fearlessness in the stands that he's taken, his gift as an orator, and his integrity. And it would be, we've had 14 years of the most magnificent presidency, a president that we have been proud of, and it's not for us to imagine how the next presidency will happen,
but anyway, this time not for you. Right?
No, but I think it'll be important to seriously and respectfully acknowledge the brilliance of his presidency and to say thank you.
Yeah.
And whoever, I don't know who the runners and riders are for the next one, but we will need to take a moment to genuinely thank Michael D. Higgins for 14 years of inspiring presidency. And how that will happen, I don't know, but I hope we get an opportunity to do it.
Yeah, I think that'll absolutely happen. But anyway, you this time for you is not the time, not yet.
Not with Lifeline and the play and all that.
So come here, you kind of brought us away from the spiritual journey towards curiosity there, which I appreciate as part of that. But like there is an actual spiritual journey as well, isn't there? Like did I see you chant in the morning now? Would you be kind of a Buddhism tourist?
No, I do. I do. I'd never say I am a Buddhist. I would say that I do it to varying degrees of seriousness and application. But I was at
what does that look like?
It just means you're aware of the Buddhist precepts, you're aware of the obligation to meditate. That's it really, but that's what I do in the same way that you know, you choose a sport and it has benefits. So I chose Buddhism and I said, okay, I will do that, and it suits me. I was I went to 2 masses the other day. My son was making his confirmation and my daughter was graduating from Salerno Secondary School in Galway. And I loved it. The mass was gorgeous, Bishop of Galway was mighty, and Father Diarmid Bourne was mighty, and they spoke soulfully and vulnerably and full of heart. And when I went to meet the Pope last year,
Yeah.
I was overwhelmed by the beauty of the Basilica, St. Peter's. I was thrown down by the gorgeous intent at the heart of Christianity, which is love. The most beautiful, noble aspiration that we love one another. But for me to do Christianity it's not clear enough. It's too much baggage. We have been overloaded with Catholic hindrance, and it's not clear. And maybe that's why I'm so attracted.
You think for Irish people, like,
Well, for me, it's just
yeah.
it's too complicated.
Yeah.
It's just too many. It's too human.
did you get a sense were you up close enough with the Pope to get a sense of him?
He let me touch him.
Handshake?
I touched him, yeah.
And did you get any vibes off him?
No, I was there with a very wise woman, my wife Yvonne, and we saw him kind of come into the room, and the sense that we both had was, this is not a holy man. This is not a saint. This is somebody who runs an organization. That was the sense we got off. Now, that's not a derogatory thing. What I'm saying is that we didn't put the burden of holiness on him. He was a lovely, lovely human being, and it was nice to meet him. But I didn't get the sense I was meeting, now, see, everything you say with Catholicism has kind of associations. Father Pio, Mother Teresa, whoever the holy saint might be. And that was always kind of reassuring. Here's a man who took the business of Catholicism seriously. So it was very, very nice to meet him.
Yeah. Any sense of they do great? What do you think from?
Leo,
Yeah.
no, he's a bit of a twerp.
No.
There's a twerpish kind of thing to him there. Is it the glasses?
I think what you mean is that he looks like a regular person, maybe more than some popes do. The fact that he's American and
We're
everything.
I think that the thing that comes across about Leo is integrity and decency and humility. Now, twerp is just a very casual way of saying that.
Tommy, your podcast with Hector and Eureka, which was phenomenally popular. I think it's been gone about a year at this stage. Any sign of going back to that?
We might do, only if we're drinking. We did these ones called.
Are you drinking?
Yeah, oh yeah. We did these ones called 3 pints, please, where we'd go to bars around the country, and we'd each have 3 pints, and we'd record the conversation, and they were fun. That was a lot of fun for us.
2-3 pints is kind of the sweet spot, isn't it? You know,
Beautiful.
That's the dragon you're chasing with the next game, isn't it? Like,
It's lovely. I haven't had a pint now for a couple of weeks, and I miss it. I'm looking forward to. My favourite place to have a pint is in the hotel on Innisir at about 11 o'clock in the morning. Beautiful.
yeah,
Beautiful.
just one.
Just a.
You mentioned there's gigs over the summer, the July gigs in the Marquee in Cork. So I think there's tickets left for Friday, July 4th.
Mhm.
Do you enjoy doing the Marquee in Cork?
It's a massive encounter, isn't it? Like, it's 4,000 people, and it's a large hurrah. So that will take. That's not a casual event. So the preparation for that has to be right.
So what will that look like?
I'm not sure, but that just means that you're open. That you're just open to, that you haven't decided before you've walked on the stage exactly what the gig is going to be. That you're open, that you're responsible to the fact there's 4,000 people there. And that you allow their energy to have an effect on you. So yeah, that's not a casual
Yeah.
It's funny because I'll probably do 2 small gigs beforehand just to get in the frame of mind for it. So I think did some kind of comedy club gigs around Galway, I think, just before. But that's
Normal.
yeah. It's big.
Right, interesting. It's complicated balance, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so the world premiere of The Cave by Kevin Barry takes place on June 6th in Dublin's Abbey Theatre. The production runs till July 18th. Then it's moved into the Galway International Arts Festival from the 22nd to the 26th of July. The Between Dog and Wolf storytelling tour has 17 nationwide dates. That starts in Roscommon on September 16th, ends in Dublin's Vicar Street October 6th, and the Tommy Tiernan Comedian in the Marquee are only tickets left for Friday, July 14th. And more details on all those shows on TommyTiernan.com. Tommy Tiernan, I enjoyed that immensely. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Radio 1.
Okay, let's do something practical now. So with the long sunny evenings and school holidays looming, we're going to talk about sleep, in particular children's sleep. And I'm joined by Professor Annie Curtis from the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland. Welcome, Annie. And you're an immunologist, you're a body clock expert, and most importantly, you're a mother.
Yeah.
Come here, before we get into children specifically, you think we all are fairly sleep deprived, yeah?
We are, yeah. Now, the evidence would definitely show that we are quite sleep deprived. And I think we can even see that who's very rational and can make decisions and can reason. And then we also have this limbic system. So I call that the lizard brain. So that's the real ancient part of our brain. That's the real part of our brain that will go through the fight or flight. Absolutely perfect for survival. But what happens in sleep deprivation is that part of the brain, the flight, freeze, flop, that becomes overactive, and the prefrontal cortex kind of takes a back seat.
Perimeters all the time for danger.
We are, and we become very irrational, and we don't have as solid reasoning as we normally would, and anxiety and depression is a part of that.
Okay, so get your sleep. Right, kids. You see, these nice sunny evenings now, like it's sunny till 10 or half at night, it can be tempting to let bedtime slide, let them out in the garden or out in the road or whatever. But then we get the consequences of that in the morning, don't we? Like,
Yeah, I think.
cranky, I think, is the word for it.
Well, as I said, so irritability, being angry, that's what we can kind of see in young kids as well. But even we can see that sleep deprivation has a really big link with obesity as well. And we know that we're dealing with, an epidemic of obesity, especially in younger kids as well. So, it's not, I don't want to be a killjoy because the weather's so nice at the moment, but
Yeah.
I still think we have to really provide enough opportunity for our kids to get enough sleep in the nighttime. And like if we think about it, newborns need about 14 to 17 hours of sleep, toddlers 11 to 14.
So let's start with newborn. So 14 to 17, is that?
Yeah, so
Nobody knows how many hours the newborns are getting because they're in their own chaos and hell and stuff.
Yeah, so
Most of them do that naturally anyway?
Absolutely. So what happens is when we're born, we've spoken a lot about the body clock, Brendan, so that's that 24-hour kind of molecular system that we have. When we're born, we just don't have a clock. And that's the reason for that, I was thinking, is because newborns need to feed so frequently, it wouldn't make sense for them to have very strong, rest activity periods. So they have no clock, no discernible rhythms whatsoever until at least 12 weeks. Now, I know there's probably some parents out there who have a 12-week-year-old and still not seeing any rhythms there. That's probably the earliest that we can start to see rhythms.
And then there are some people who'll be listening saying, but why is so-and-so's baby sleeping through the night and mine isn't?
Well, that truly is the great debate, Brendan, isn't it? Because, and if you go to any, mom and dad and baby groups, like all they're talking about is either the fact that they're getting no sleep or those who are getting quite a bit of sleep. I used to actually get quite a bit of sleep, and I wouldn't even say it in the mother and baby groups because I was afraid of what might happen. Yeah.
And for young parents, sleep when the baby sleeps, is that a good plan?
Yeah, like I think certainly when you have a newborn, definitely try to sleep when the baby sleeps, at least up until 3 o'clock. You just don't want, what you still want to try to do is protect that nighttime sleep. You really want to still see, can you get as many hours as possible during the dark phase, because that's when your body and your body clock expects you to be sleeping.
Okay. So toddler years then, which things calm down slightly, like, but still a bit mad. How much sleep does a toddler need?
So, and I suppose that the information that I'm given here, if people want to have a look, the National Sleep Foundation has a great website, so take a look at that. So for toddlers, that would be 11 to 14 hours sleep. And I think a lot of times, toddlers are getting that amount of sleep, between their naps and
Okay, so including naps and that, they don't need to go through for it.
No, this is all sleep over the full 24 hours.
Okay, so we get to primary school age, and you see, that's, I think, when the pressure starts, because kids start comparing bedtimes and stuff like this, and so what time should they go to bed, and how long should they be sleeping for at that stage?
Yeah, so I have 2 girls who are in primary school, and I certainly saw this. Certainly once they started comparing with their peers, such and such doesn't go to bed until such a time. But then, funnily enough, if I ever followed up with that mom and dad, that wasn't the right time. So you have to take what they're saying with a pinch of salt. I think they're just thinking about things in terms of what they want, not necessarily what's happening.
Verification.
So like primary school kids, as I said, 9 to 11 hours sleep. And what I try to do is I actually try to count back. So I think, okay, they have to get up at say 7:30 in the morning, and then I count myself back and then try to decide. But I have to say it is difficult because not only are they talking about their peers, but there's so much for them to do, and I think as well, I see it in our own 2 girls, there's so much on, especially during the school year, between after school, all these after school activities. I think what's happening is we're probably eating later than we probably would have naturally eaten if there wasn't the dance or the soccer or whatever going on. So it is hard to fit in all of these things. And one thing that I'm seeing that's creeping into primary school as well is doing training at 8 a.m. in the morning. So actually doing soccer training or hockey training. I understand why people are doing it because there's so much on, but it's probably not great in terms of allowing them to get enough sleep throughout the night.
A lot of the time, like we all know that by the time you get to holidays, like by the time you get to the summer holidays,
they are
absolutely worn out.
Yeah.
Speaking of exhausted, is that real thing of that, like, if they're overtired they don't get to sleep, then that, like, adults as well, there's a point where you should have gone to sleep and you don't, and you get past it in some other point where you're kind of manic or something.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think when you're overtired, I think sometimes what happens is like you go to sleep very quickly and you go into a deep sleep very quickly and it's very rapid, and then you tend to sort of, well, certainly for myself, tend to wake up at like 3 or 4 a.m. then the next morning, you know, and I can't get back to sleep. So, you know, you're always trying to give yourself, you know, enough opportunity to have enough hours of sleep during the night time. But if you do need to take a nap, as I said, even with parents, try not to nap after 3 p.m. because we call it sleep debt. What you need to do is you need to try to accumulate enough sleep debt to put you to sleep. So a nice analogy for sleep debt is a balloon. So when you wake up in the morning, you have no air in that balloon, you have no sleep debt, and as the day goes on, you start accumulating sleep debt. The balloon fills up with air, and you get to a point, and I think about it like a nice big full balloon. It's like a pillow, and you need to have that to put yourself to sleep. Once you start to sleep, then that balloon, the air comes out of that balloon, and you wake up the next morning with a deflated balloon, but you have to give yourself enough time to fill that balloon. And if you're doing big naps or naps at about 7 p.m. or, you know, maybe 6 p.m, you're just not going to be able to.
Okay. All right, teenagers. So not only how much sleep should they be getting, but I'd say people would be wondering when should they be getting it, like, because they can tend to stay up until all hours, don't want to get up in the morning then.
Yeah, I think teenagers are a fascinating group when it comes to sleep because their body clock actually changes. Like a lot of us think, oh, teenagers, they just want to stay up all night and they just want to sleep all day.
Yeah.
Well, actually their body clock and the gland that releases that sleep hormone called melatonin, that actually is delayed in teenagers. So once you hit puberty, that starts to be delayed by about 2 hours. So while we start releasing melatonin at maybe say 8 p.m. or 9 p.m, teenagers don't start. Like, this is biological. It doesn't matter.
It's not their fault then.
It is not their fault.
Wired to be night owls.
And I know people might say, well, my teenager is on the screen and whatever. We even see this in tribes in the Amazon which have no electricity. This is what happens naturally. And there's an evolutionary reason for this, which I think is fascinating. And if you think back to the cave times, what you want is you don't want everyone to sleep at the same time, do you? Because a bear could come into the cave or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is teenagers, their sleep gets delayed by a couple of hours, right? But then elderly people, I don't know if you know, I certainly see this with my mum, they start to wake up earlier. So now you have probably coverage for most of the night that either the teenagers are awake late into the late night, and then your elderly individuals are awake in the morning, and that gives 24 hours safety to the cave.
That elderly thing's happening to me already. We've 24-hour cover at my house at this stage, I think. Is physical activity good to help with sleep?
Physical activity is fantastic for a number of reasons. So first of all, you know, it's great to get the muscles going and the muscles, they themselves will release hormones which help with sleep. But you don't want to do your physical activity too close to when you're going to bed. So, you know, I often see people and they're out running at like 9 or 10 p.m. and I'm thinking that's very late. You know, that is going to impact their sleep. So you want to leave about 3 or 4 hours before you go to bed.
You could, like, I think a lot of people can get out for a walk or run.
Definitely, especially with the evenings. Especially with the evening.
That's okay, but just leave enough of it.
Just leave enough of a time, because again, you're trying to build up that sleep debt. Remember, you're trying to fill the balloon with air.
Into the balloon, okay. And then I'd say you're big on routine and everything, but then a lot of people at the weekend, there's no law and order, like, and they have a lie-in and everyone has a lie-in, and is that wrecking everything, all the good work in the previous 5 days?
Well, you know, you could say it's funny because our 2 daughters went to see Tate McRae last night and they had a big lie-in this morning, and your researcher there was going, really, what about the routine? You know, researcher heal thyself. Yeah, it's not always the case. But if we can, I think if people are suffering with sleep, the first thing you need to look at is your routine, and are you going to bed and getting up at the same time, you know, within reason, during the weekday versus the weekend. And look, I know how these things are, but the problem when you have one schedule during the week and another schedule during the weekend is you're basically giving yourself jet lag. So it's like actually traveling over to the east, and that is impacting your body clock. So having that routine the same for weekday and weekend is probably the most important thing you can do to improve your sleep.
Okay. And just before you go, Annie, general tips for all of us for getting a better night's sleep, particularly over the summer when
Well,
it's very bright.
Yeah, so I think blackout blinds are great. And the problem with us during the summer, and I think we've spoken about it before, Brendan, is, you know, really, it would be better if we weren't on summertime. Like, it would be better if we had stayed on standard time.
Yeah.
Because when we shift to summertime, which we do in March, it means we actually all get about 30 minutes less sleep. So it actually really impacts, and that's a lot. Like 30 minutes is a lot. So I would say, yeah, keep the room cold as you can. Blackout blinds are really important. One thing that I've started to do, which I think it helps as well, turn around the alarm clock. Don't be looking at the time, you know what I mean? Because I think that can get you quite anxious. You wake up at 2 a.m, you're like, oh, I've only got another 5 hours, you know? So actually turn around the alarm clock.
Don't look at the time.
Don't
All
look
right.
at the time.
All right, I'll try it. Okay, Professor Annie Curtis, thank you very much. Saturday with Colm O'Mungan is coming up next. Colm, what have you got today?
Well, a common question asked in the housing crisis is why don't local authorities build more social housing directly? People point back to the 30s, 40s, 50s and the big housing schemes that were built, asking why don't they do that anymore? And of the houses they do own, why don't they turn tenancies around more quickly? When somebody vacates a home or it's been vacant for a while, why isn't it brought back into use more quickly? The Taoiseach was very exercised about that in the Dáil last week, saying the local authorities have enough resources to do it, but we're going to hear an expert view on this from somebody who sat on the Housing Commission looking at this specific area, and our political panel, of course, regularly deal with these issues. They'll be dealing with that as well. The other issue we'll be dealing with is assessment of needs required to access additional supports. There are massive waiting lists. It's about 15,000 at the moment, waiting over 6 months. And the HSE said in answer to a parliamentary question that could rise to 24,000 by the end of the year. Cara Darmody is a 14-year-old campaigner doing a 50-hour protest on this outside the Dáil next week, and in tandem with that there's going to be an opposition motion being tabled to get assessments down to the legally required 6-month time frame. But where are the psychologists going to come from to do that? The HSE is already needing to outsource some to private sector psychologists. How quickly are they going to be trained to get down that list and stop it going upwards? We've been asking the president of the Psychological Society of Ireland who's about this, and he's been outlining his concerns that alongside the growing waiting lists, there's also a lack of regulation of people who are currently advertising their services to carry out
Okay, so
assessments.
this is people who in desperation are going off and paying good chunks of money themselves to get it done.
To people who may not be qualified
Okay.
to carry out assessments of need. There's a lot of due diligence to be done, and parents are very busy and at the end of their tether, and they may not have the time or the capacity to be able to do that kind of due diligence on the practitioners they're going to.
Okay, Saturday with Colm O'Mungan at 1 o'clock. Thanks, Colm. We'll take a break.
Email brendan@rte.ie.
Coming up this weekend on Sunday with Marion.
10 years on from the marriage equality referendum, I catch up with co-director of the campaign, Bronagh Healy, and performer and activist, Rory O'Neill, also known as the fabulous Panty Bliss. We'll talk about their strategy and the extraordinary scenes in Dublin Castle when the result was announced. Also this week, Duran Duran frontman Simon Le Bon tells me what the band and the fans still mean to him, and what songs they'll definitely include in their set list for Dublin and Cork.
Dive into RTE Player and escape your daily grind. Dive into amateur sleuths and professional killers with the hit US thriller A Murder at the End of the World.
The first life that a serial killer takes tends to be someone he knows.
Or dive into the front line in a new season of Blue Lights.
How's things in Belfast?
Robberies, drug seizures.
Take your pick.
Dive in and stream brand new series now on RTE Player.
One príam with Nadina a bhín in an Lushach the wad Rivraca online. Nadina Austin RC beag bound here toilet too. Agus each shoot will come the pressure to Europe. Format our bar to agus done a clear of the over the pond. Definitely new electrical, it needs tuning, agus needs cleaning. Gridine or Lemur TFI of Fossil only, your hair on the final glass. Is singing Transport for Ireland. Bumper the ship, bumper the hawk.
How can I help? It's a question I ask my patients every day. It's a question I ask myself. One thing I've learned is that I can help even more when I can easily connect with
Physios,
pediatricians, specialists,
nurses.
who are all working with me in a healthcare network that takes a wider view of your health. That's VHI, where healthcare connects. So let me rephrase the question. How can we help?
VHI,
because your health means everything.
Brendan O'Connor on RTE Radio 1 with All Care Pharmacy. Need expert advice on your family's health? Speak to us today at All Care Pharmacy, Ireland's largest community pharmacy network. Brendan O'Connor.